Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to the session of textual study of the Quran. You would recall that we had started to read the section that began from verse 105 and we had gone all the way up to verse 121. And today we'll start off with, in fact, verse 121 because we finished until verse 120. And once we are through with this until verse 129, then we will attempt to do the literal and idiomatic translation. So we will start off, and you can see the screen being shared before you. And this is the anecdote or the account of the prophetic mission in which the Battle of Uhud is discussed, and how Muslims are at first they were faced with a lot of adversity and they showed little cowardice as well. But later on they regrouped, and once again they were helped by the Almighty, and finally they were able to make the day. So the whole scenario has been depicted in a very graphic way here in these verses of Surah Al-Imran. So the words are, وَإِذْ غَدَوْتَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ تُبَوِّئُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ مَقَاعِدَ لِلْقِتَالِ وَاللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Make them understand this reality, O Prophet, and for this remind them of the occasion when on the day of Uhud you left your house very early in the morning to position Muslims in their battle posts. At that time God was aware of your intentions and was listening to what you were saying, and God hears all and knows all. This is a place in Surah Al-Imran in which, as I have just said, that Muslims have been reminded of the losses they had suffered earlier on initially because of the behavior and attitude of some of the hypocrites that had infiltrated amongst them. So the Battle of Uhud, we know, is a battle in which the Quraysh had taken the initiative to attack the Muslims in Medina. And we also know that as far as this battle is concerned, initially a lot of consternation was seen, and the Prophet actually wanted to fight the army by going out of the city, and the hypocrites actually advised him to stay within the city, and obviously because of the fact that they were scared. But the Prophet, of course, paying heed to the wiser elements in the army, he actually went out of the city. And it is here that the Quran is portraying that battle when the Prophet was positioning his soldiers in the battlefield in various battle posts. So you see the word maqa'id actually is the plural of maq'ad, and it refers to the places, the bunkers, you can say, or the battle posts in which Muslims were to be placed. And one thing that you might need to note here, which is very important, that Wallahu Sami'un Alim, apparently this is a disconnect from the previous verse or the previous section of the verse. So it's like saying that remember when you were placing the believers on their battle post or in their battle post so that they could fight. Now Wallahu Sami'un Alim apparently does not seem to connect, and that is exactly why Ustaz Ghamidi has actually revealed the suppression on which this Wallahu Sami'un Alim is actually coordinated. So he has said that at that time God was aware of your intentions and was listening to what you were saying. So remember, Sami'un Alim, which actually means someone who is someone who hears all and who knows all. So there has to be something suppressed immediately before this expression that relates to his listening ability and that relates to his knowledge. So that is why it is said that God knew their intentions and God was listening to what they were saying. Of course, they were conferring with one another regarding the battle strategy and what exactly should be done. And then this is depicted in the very next verse. It is said that إِذْ هَمَّتْ طَائِفَتَانِ مِنْكُمْ أَن تَفْشَلَا وَاللَّهُ وَلِيُّهُمَا وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِبَدْرٍ وَأَنْتُمْ أَذِلَّةٌ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. At the time when two of your groups became timid, even though God was there to help them, and it is only in God whom the believers should trust. And before this, God had also helped you at Badr when you were very weak. Even then you express ingratitude. So have fear of God that you may be grateful. So this is, this is the time, or this is the place in the Battle of Uhud in which Muslims had shown weakness. And in fact, we know from history that two of their tribes or two of their groups, so one of them was the Banu Salama, which belonged to the Khazraj, and the other ones were the Banu Harisa, who belonged to the Aus tribe. So the Aus and the Khazraj tribe, we know, they were the tribes that basically inhabited Medina, and they were the Ansar, or the helpers of the Prophet of God when he had migrated, and they were famously known by this word because of the fact that the word Nasir is the singular of Ansar, and it means a helper. So these were the Ansar, and in comparison to them we had the Muhajirun, and Muhajirun of course signifies people who had migrated with the Prophet from Mecca. So from amongst these Ansar, the Banu Salama from the Khazraj tribe and the Banu Harisa from the Aus tribe, they actually became afflicted with cowardice, and they backed away. And both these groups actually showed some cowardice because of the pranks played by the hypocrites, but they later shrugged it off. Yes, initially they had this feeling of being overcome, but later they shrugged it off, and the hypocrites in reality did not want to go out for the battle. So we've just discussed that. But the Prophet knew this weakness on their part. So he wanted that before setting off, the real situation come to light. For this purpose, actually, as a test, he posed a question before the Muslims, that should the Quraysh be fought while remaining in Medina, or should they be combated by going outside the city? So this is a question which the Prophet actually had posed to his army, to his combatants, so that their exact situation and their exact morale could be known. The answer to this question from true and staunch Muslims obviously should have been in the affirmative, and this is precisely the answer they gave. On the other hand, the hypocrites started to present the benefits of fighting from within Medina. So when the Prophet had fully assessed this situation and the weakness of the hypocrites became evident to him, he gave them the same answer which was in his heart and which he had given to his true companions who were willing to lay down their lives for him. So when the hypocrites saw that their conspiracy had failed, they did at first set off with the Muslims, that we know that they set off, but later their leader Abdullah ibn Ubay, we know he was a famous leader of the hypocrites, the Munafiqun, he tempted them, and by presenting the excuse that their suggestion had not been honored, left the Muslim army with 300 of his people. This incident naturally affected the morale of some groups among the Muslims, because they were just 1,000 as compared to the disbelievers, who we know were thrice or three times their count, and they amounted to 3,000. So defection of 300 people from 1,000 is a significant number, and we can see that at the very beginning of the battle it was something of a very grave incident, and it was but natural for faint-hearted fighters and combatants to be affected by it, and this did happen. And so earlier on they were affected by this desertion of 300 people, but it does seem that later on they controlled themselves and they got over this initial period of jitters. So the Quran has actually reminded them, in fact the Almighty Himself has reminded them, they remember, if this is something that they are afraid of, that it's basically the number of people that win armies, win battles, this is not true. So what is actually reminded before them is what happened in the battle of Badr. So the words are, وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِبَدْرٍ وَأَنْتُمْ أَذِلَّةٌ, that don't you remember what happened at Badr? God specially helped you. لَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِبَدْرٍ وَأَنْتُمْ أَذِلَّةٌ. Azilla means you were weak. Again, this is something that we have to know as per the linguistic usage of the Arabic language. Azilla, of course, is the plural of Zalil. Now, Zalil in the Urdu language has a very different meaning. It means someone who is disgraceful, or someone who is disgraced actually. But this is not the case with the word Zalil in the Arabic language. So in Arabic it means someone who is weak, someone who does not have the strength. So it is here that they are reminded, remember that if Abdullah ibn Ubay has deserted them with his 300 companions, this should not cause any unrest among them, because in the not very far ago past, not a distant past, in the Battle of Badr, which was a couple of years before the Battle of Uhud, a similar situation was faced. In fact, the situation was much more dire at that time. Muslims were just 313 in number. So they are being told that if in that case they had won the battle because the Almighty had specially helped them, and the word Nusra is specially used in the case of the Almighty, telling them that it is God's help that made them prevail over their enemy. So if this happened in the past, why can't it happen again? So it's like reminding them, it's like boosting their morale, it's like encouraging them. And فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. So have fear of God that you may be grateful to Him. So you must remember that this gratitude is something that will earn God's help. If you knew what had happened in the past and you acknowledged that it was God who actually miraculously made them prevail over their enemy, if that has happened once, then why cannot it happen again? So you have to be mindful of God, and if you are mindful of God, you will be always thankful to Him, because with His consciousness, being a God conscious person, the biggest consequence of that is that you immediately feel thankful to Him for the help and favor He has done to you. So فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ إِذْ تَقُولُ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَلَنْ يَكْفِيَكُمْ أَنْ يُمِدَّكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ بِثَلَاثَةِ آلَافٍ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُنْزَلِينَ بَلَىٰ إِنْ تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا وَيَأْتُوكُمْ مِنْ فَوْرِهِمْ هَذَا يُمْدِدْكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ بِخَمْسَةِ آلَافٍ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُسَوِّمِينَ. So this is now a portrayal that has taken us back to the Battle of Badr. So it is now being portrayed that how the Almighty actually helped the believers in the Battle of Badr. So it is said, remember, when you were saying to the believers, and this is of course the Prophet telling the believers, is it not sufficient for you that your Lord should help you with 3,000 angels sent down for this very purpose? Yes, why not? If you have patience and remain fearful of God, and your enemies attack you at this very instance, your Lord shall send to you, to your aid, 5,000 angels marked specifically. So they came into the battlefield with distinctive marks, and the purpose behind this demarcation, of course, was to inform the Muslims that the Almighty will make elaborate arrangements to send these angels on this campaign. So the implication is that even without such glad tidings, the faithful should believe that help and victory always come from God alone. So if in the Battle of Badr, the Almighty had sent 3,000 angels and then of course increased their quantity to 5,000, and it is known that they fought besides the Muslim army, and it is something that miraculously gave them victory. So if this could have happened in a way that they saw God's help from their very eyes, so they should not lose hope that if something of a similar instance arises again, then He will still be there, He will still help them. So Bala in tasbiru wa tattaqu. So this is what is actually required of them. In tasbiru wa tattaqu. You must persevere, you must be patient in this cause, and at the same time remain fearful of God, remain conscious of the fact that He, in His own grand scheme, is going to take, He might delay some of the conspicuous elements in which we might think that His help is arrived or not, but that is a separate thing. He has His own scheme to follow, but then there could be some delay, there could be some wisdom behind that delay, but it's not going to be permanent. So in tasbiru wa tattaqu, so which means that if you are steadfast, if you persevere in this cause, and you also trust God, that if they come immediately, وَيَأْتُوكُمْ مِنْ فَوْرِهِمْ, which means that if your enemies attack you at that very instance, هَذَا يُمْدِدْكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ بِخَمْسَةِ آلَافٍ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُسَوِّمِينَ, that your Lord shall send down to your help 5,000 angels which are marked specifically, which means that they were actually distinctively marked so that Muslims could know that these were not individuals from amongst their own army, these were God sent forces, and this is what we know that it happened. And as a result, it is something that should not cause any consternation. Any feeling of cowardice that might arise as a result should be just hushed away. وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى لَكُمْ وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ قُلُوبُكُمْ بِهِ وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ لِيَقْطَعَ طَرَفًا مِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْ يَكْبِتَهُمْ فَيَنْقَلِبُوا خَائِبِينَ لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٌ أَوْ يَتُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ أَوْ يُعَذِّبَهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. And God undertook this only to give glad tidings to you, and that your hearts be assured from it, and help comes only from God, the mighty, the very wise. So وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى لَكُمْ. So God undertook this only to give glad tidings to you, that your hearts are assured. So if you understand that this is how God's plan is, that He wants you to undertake what best you can, even if you are few in number, that's the best that you can muster, then you have to go into that battle if it is something of a requirement, and the gap will be filled by God. So if you do your part, then God is going to step in to do his part. But if you do not do your part, God is not going to help you. So there is a certain law. And that is why God has said that He has made this a glad tidings for you, so that وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ قُلُوبُكُمْ بِهِ, that you are assured because of this. And وَمَن نَصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. And then it says that He undertook this so that He may give an opportunity to these disbelievers to embrace faith, and in this manner He may sever one part of theirs or humiliate them to such an extent that they return in disgrace. Again, this is something of a very, very important thing to note. So the Almighty says that He undertook this so that He may give an opportunity to these disbelievers, which means so that if they are given this opportunity and they accept faith, then they must realize that as far as this faith is concerned, if they do not accept faith, He will, as a result, sever one part of theirs, which means that they will be cut off from the rest and they will be humiliated to such an extent that they return in disgrace. Again, something that we have to understand, that God has His own ways to help believers. And then it is said, لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٍ أَوْ يَتُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ أَوْ يُعَذِّبَهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. You do not have any authority in this regard, that the Almighty deal with them in this way, or show favor to them and accept their repentance if they repent, or send His punishment to them because they are unjust. Now, this is something technically that must be understood. So it seems that some thought occupied Prophet about the future of his people, at which the ongoing discourse actually was halted. It was halted. So the words are لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٍ. لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ, of course, which means that you do not have any say in this, that providing guidance and reward and punishment only rests with God. So if God wants, He will bless the people of the Prophet's nation with the urge to seek repentance, and if He wants, He will punish them in the same manner as He punished the previous nations. So the Prophet is being told that this is not his prerogative, it is God's prerogative. And of course, He's not going to punish people out of His own whim or reward them out of His own whim. His punishment and His reward, they are governed by specific laws. If a person of a group of people deserve that punishment, only then they are punished. And if a group of people deserve that reward, then of course they are rewarded. So basically, this decision is His sole prerogative, God's sole prerogative, and whatever decision He takes will be based on His wisdom and His laws. No one can interfere with His decisions in any manner. However, He is forgiving and merciful, so one should hope that He will be gracious. And at the end, you can see the parenthetical sentence, the discourse is linked to أَوْ يَكْبِتَهُمْ فَيَنْقَلِبُوا خَائِبِينَ, which means that basically the readers are able to understand the sequence and context of the discourse. So you have to understand that basically لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٌ, this is a small part of insertion. This is like a comment made by the Almighty. And basically the discourse is something like this: فَيَنْقَلِبُوا خَائِبِينَ أَوْ يَتُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ أَوْ يُعَذِّبَهُم. The in-between part, لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٌ, is a comment, it's like a comment made by the Almighty on some thought that had arisen in the minds of the Prophet, that he has had something about the future. But the Almighty actually halted the discourse and said that whatever you have in mind regarding the future, remember, it is not up to you to make people realize and make them accept faith or decide otherwise. It says this is God's sole prerogative. And then it is said, وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ يَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, which means that only God has this authority, and to Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth. He shall forgive whomsoever He wants to and punish whomsoever He wants to according to His law. And in reality, God is forgiving, ever merciful. So again, this is like an assertion of God's authority, that as far as providing guidance is concerned, this is something which is discussed copiously in the Quran. It is not in any way the wish or the prerogative of the Prophet in any way. He might think of something, but it is God. So at one instance, the Quran says, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ, which means that you cannot guide people from مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ, whom you love, whom you hold dear, because guidance is itself based on law, and a person who is to be guided is a person who would like to be guided, who first of all gives due value to his or her own internal guidance, which means, of course, the right and wrong that are known to him and her. So if people value this internal guidance, only then God makes or regards them to be worthy of guidance. So however much the Prophet might love his people that they should be guided, he is stopped here and he is told that, well, this is something which only God can know, because the Prophet does not know what is in the hearts of people and to what extent they deserve to be shown lenience. But this is something which is very known to the Almighty. And if you look at the Quran, you'll find that this is a very common theme of the Quran, that whenever the might and the control and the power of the Almighty is expressed as a result of some incident, immediately following that you'll find a verse in which the might and power and majesty of God is depicted, as you can see in this verse 129. وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ يَغْفِرُ لِمَن يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَن يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, which of course means that only God has this authority, and to Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth, and He shall forgive whomsoever He wants to and punish whomsoever He wants to. And I've been explaining that this man yasha, which means that He can do whatever He likes, it does not mean that whatever He likes is something which is against wisdom, which is against justice. No, it will be in accordance with His wisdom and justice. Actually, the word man yasha refers to the fact that once He decides to do something, no one can stop Him from doing it. He will do whatever He likes. He will do whatever He likes according to His wisdom. And once He decides, no one is able to stop Him from implementing His decision. That is precisely what is meant by these words, that He does what He wants. It does not mean that He does what He wants in a haphazard way, in a way that we cannot see. No, He does it according to a particular way. But once He decides to do something according to His wisdom and justice, then no one can stop Him. He will implement His will. So before we start on the linguistic and idiomatic translation of this section of verses, if you have any questions regarding what we have studied today, please raise them. So I'm going to start off with the literal and idiomatic translation of the verses, so that we are now able to scrutinize these verses in more detail. Once again, I'd like to remind you that basically when we do this literal and idiomatic translation, it is to bring you closer to the text, because once we are explaining the text, it goes more into the interpretation part of the text. The literal translation and the idiomatic translation is intended to bring you closer to the text, so that you can connect yourself with the Arabic words and their meanings, and without knowing Arabic, you are able to make some sense of what is being said. So please do give this your due attention and importance, and it is always good if you can note down these words, because the purpose is that when these sentences are broken up, the individual words, their vocabulary is known to you. You get to know their meanings, because you see there are words which keep on repeating themselves in the Quran. So if you have a sizable vocabulary up till now, if you have been doing that, let's say if you finish up Surah Al-Imran with this vocabulary, you'll find that the rest of the Quran becomes quite easy for you to understand, because the future vocabulary is going to repeat itself a lot. Yes, there would be still new words, but you will find yourself very comfortable in translating, and that is precisely the purpose, that for people who are not able to learn Arabic at your age, or maybe because of the time that you have, you are still able to be very close to the text. And I would also like to express this fact and acknowledge this fact, that this methodology that I am just presenting before you is basically something which a very famous scholar of Islam, Shah Waliullah, you must have heard of him. So Shah Waliullah, who is the person who was a very profound scholar of Islam, to him is credited the first Persian translation of the Quran. And so after him, his grandson, and then the rest of a lot of people in his own progeny, they did translation. So Shah Abdul Qadir, his grandson, was someone who was responsible of translating the Quran in the Urdu language in a way that every word was written below the Arabic text, in the sense that it would be directly understood. But then that translation was not meant as an idiomatic translation. That was more of a literal translation, and you had to make sense of that literal translation by connecting words and by using that literal translation and converting it into an idiomatic translation. So you might be remembering this in your own childhood, that when you were taught the English language or the Urdu language or any language, so one of the things that you were given as exercises was that you would be given a certain story to create, or maybe a sentence to create, and that you would be given hints, and you would be like joining dots between various words and then trying to make them into a full sentence. So this is a very, very closely, I would say, a very similar method, in which basically when you literally translate a word, the sense that comes to you, of course, is not in the same order. But if you reflect on the literal translation, by adding more words and by using your common sense, you can complete those hints and form a meaningful sentence. So this is precisely what the children of Shah Waliullah have been doing in the last 250 years, 300 years. This is a very common method. It is common in the Indian subcontinent. It is still common in many places, especially for those people for whom learning the Arabic language is difficult. And I have seen and I've heard of very miraculous stories that people who have been able to master this method without knowing Arabic, if you see an Arabic verse written maybe at an airport or some station or any place, so they would without knowing the Arabic language, simply by knowing the vocabulary and because of the fact that they have gone through the structure, they will very, very closely translate the verse, and it's something which is quite mind-boggling. So that is why we have adopted this methodology. I do hope that it's making some impact on you, and in case it is not, then please do consider writing down the vocabulary and the sense that in which this translation is being made. And of course, you can always stop me to ask your questions. But as I said, this requires some special focus and some special importance from you to fully benefit from it. So we start off with verse 100.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Yes.
So, Dr. Saleem, tell me, with the angels coming down at the time of war, did that also stop after the Prophet stopped coming into this world, or do we still have angels coming in to help when times are difficult for?
Regarding today, we cannot say anything with certainty. God has His own ways to help. But in the times of the Prophet, the help was palpable. It was something that could be foreseen, that could be depicted, that could be conveyed, that was actually there. Because you see, it was God who could have notified us, and He did so through revelation. Today, He might be still helping people in His own ways, but because we have no knowledge, angels are, we know that they are around us, and we also know that they do help believers. They ask for forgiveness for them. They have a special protection that they can offer. But again, this is like more of a general thing that we are told in the Quran. Regarding the specifics, it's only the Almighty who could have told us this, and He did so in the times of the prophets of God, because the institution of divine revelation or wahi was still in vogue. But today, in the absence of that, or let me say the termination of the institution of prophethood, we cannot be certain in regarding a particular case. But more of a general, in a general way, we can say that yes, this still happens today, but it cannot be pinpointed.
Okay, thank you so much.
So it says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتُ وَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Va not, va and, la not. Takunu, you become. Ka is like saying similar. Allazina, to those who. Tafarraku. So tafarraku means divided into sects, who became divided. Wa and. Ikhtalafu. Ikhtalafu means who differed. So remember, when we read it by joining the two words, it would be wakhtalafu. But when we read it by not joining the two parts, we would say wa ikhtalafu. But normally we would say wakhtalafu. Mimbad means after. Ma ja'ahum, that came to them. And what came to them? Al-Bayyinat, clear signs. So once again, literally it would be, and be not like those who differed, who and had who became divided and who differed after came to them signs. After came to them clear signs. So this is how we would literally do it as a translation. But of course, idiomatically, it's very simple that be not like those. So don't become like those who became divided into various factions and who differed with one another. And this happened after Bayyinat had come to them. Ja'ahum, came to them, Bayyinat. So Bayyinat, of course, means clear signs. It refers to miracles. It can refer to God's special signs. It can also refer to His guidance. So basically, the Muslims are being told, believers are being told that don't be like these people of the book who did not follow their own book. And because of the fact they did not follow their own book, they differed with one another. They became divided into various factions. And this did not happen because there was any confusion or they had any lack of knowledge. This happened even after the book of God had come to them, even after clear guidance had come to them, which means that this happened because of their jealousies, their personal interests, and of course their ignorance, etc. So, وَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Va and ulaika, they, lahum, for them, azab, torment, azim, great. So literally, and for them, and they for them. So basically, it's like a double stress, and they for them torment great. That is how we would literally understand this. But idiomatically, and for them, it is a grave torment, which is a huge torment. So, of course, this refers to the hereafter, because the word azabun azim is a very common expression of the Almighty, which signifies the punishment of the hereafter. Yawma tabyaddu wujuhum wa taswaddu wujuh. So, yawma, the day, tabyaddu wujuh. So, tabyaddu means to turn white. Wujuh is the plural of wajh, and wajh means face. So, the day when turns white faces. So, wujuh is the plural. And taswaddu. So, taswaddu means to turn black. And wujuh is the same word, wajh is the plural of wajh, which means faces. So, literally it would be the day turns white faces and turns black faces. The day turns white faces and turns white or turns black faces. So, this is how we would literally translate it. But idiomatically, of course, would be the day on which some faces turn white and the day on which some faces will turn black, again referring to the day of judgment. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُم. Fa, therefore, amma, when, allazina, those who, iswaddat. So, iswaddat is the same word as taswadda. It's just a different inflection, which means turn black. Wujuhuhum, their faces. So, again, this is something in which you will see a very special style of the Almighty. So, when some faces, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُم would mean that the darkened faces, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُم. So, as far as the faces that will turn black are concerned, they will be asked. Now, of course, the word ask is not present here. But the very next word tells us that this is a question that is being asked to them, because the words are akafartum ba'da imanikum. Do you disbelieve after your belief? So, of course, the word kafartum has signified the fact that this is a question that will be asked regarding those people whose faces had turned black. So, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُم, as for the people whose faces had turned black, they will be asked. As I said, the word they will be asked is not in the text, but it is understood, because the very next is a question. The very next sentence is a question which says, أَكَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. Will you kafartum, turn to disbelief, ba'da, after, imanikum, your belief. Iman is belief, kum is you. So, will you end up as disbelievers after you had believed? Fazuku, fa, therefore, zuku, taste, al-azab, torment, bima, because, kuntum, you were, takfurun, disbelieving. So, it says, if because of the fact that you have now turned to disbelief after belief, so now you taste this torment. Zuku, taste. Zaiqa, of course, is a word that we know in the Urdu language. Fazuku, so taste. Al-azab, the torment. Bima kuntum, because you were, takfurun, disbelieving. So again, we know that this is a torment which is sent to them because of their disbelief. And then the other section of people is addressed. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ بِيَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُم فَفِي رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Wa, and amma, as for allazina, those who, ibiyaddat or nabiyaddat would mean turn white. Wujuhuhum, their faces. So wujuh, as I said, is the plural of wajh, hum is them. So whose faces will turn white. Fafi, fa, therefore, fi, in rahmatillah, God's mercy. So as for those whose faces will be white, as for those whose faces will be bright, because you see, whiteness actually signifies brightness. So although the words black and white are used, you can clearly see it's not that the face will turn black, it is basically the first faces will turn gloomy. And when it says ibyaddat, it doesn't mean that the faces are going to change their color and become white. It only means that they'll become bright. Fafi rahmatillah. So as for those people whose faces are white, they shall be in God's mercy. Hum fiha khalidun. Hum, they, fi, in, ha, it, khalidun, forever. They will remain in them forever, or they shall abide by them in ever. Again, fiha is referring to God's mercy, which means that they will be in God's mercy and they will abide in God's mercy forever. Hum, they, fiha, in it, khalidun, forever. They will live in God's mercy forever. Tilka ayatullahi. So tilka ayatullah would mean these are God's revelations. These are God's verses. Natluha. Natlu means we recite. Ha, them. Alayka, on you. So ala is on, ka is you. So ka is referring to Prophet Muhammad, saying that these are God's verses that we recite to you. Bil haq, with the truth, which means that whatever is being said is absolutely true and there's nothing which can be in any doubt regarding them. So tilka ayatullah, these are God's verses that we recite to you. Wamallahu yuridu zulman lil alameen, wa and ma not. Allah, God, yuridu intends, zulman, oppression, lil alameen, for the alameen, for the people of the world. So wamallahu yuridu zulman lil alameen would mean, and God does not intend zulm for the alameen. This is the literal translation. And idiomatically also, and God does not intend injustice for the people of the world. Le, for alameen, of course referring to the, it's also a plural. So alameen is basically the plural of alam, and alam means the world. And we've also discussed this, that at times the word alam is used in the plural form as alameen. It's not that it's referring to a lot of worlds, it's just referring to the vastness of the world. So in the Arabic language, especially in the classical Arabic of the Quran, many a time a plural also signifies the vastness of something. So alameen often takes our mind to mean that, well, God is referring to all the universe, all the inhabitants of the universe. That's not the case here. So basically it's telling us that the vastness of the universe. You might recall that in the Quran the word mashriq, which is the east, is used in the plural mashariq. So we don't have several easts. Similarly it is said magharib, which means several maghribs. So again here it's not the number that is signified by the plural, it's the vastness. So the Rabbul Mashariq would mean Lord of the vastness of the east. So this is one instance, or there are many other instances in which the plural is used to signify the profundity and the vastness of something, and it is the case here as well. وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Wa, and lillah, for God, ma, that, fi, in, as-samawat. Samawat is the plural of sama, and that means heavens or skies. Wa, and ma, that, fi, in, al-ard, the earth. So, and for God, that which is in the heavens and that is within the earth. So that is what we will translate it literally. So idiomatically it would be, and for God is, to God belongs everything that is in the heavens and the earth. Wa, and ilallah. So ila is towards, Allah is God. Turja'u. So turja'u is return, to be returned. Al-umur. Umur is the plural of amr, and it actually means matters or affairs or cases. So, wa ilallahi turja'ul umur, and towards God return matters. This is how we would understand it literally. But idiomatically it would be, and all matters return towards God. All matters return towards God, which means that finally everything is going to return to God so that He can pronounce His judgment. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. كنتم, you, خير, best, ummah, group. Remember, I've also talked about the word ummah. In our own Urdu language, the word ummah is used for a very vast expanse of people, a very vast number of people. In fact, Muslim ummah is the word that we commonly use in the English language as well, connoting the whole Muslim body. And in the Arabic language, this is not the case. Just as we just learned that there are verses or there are words in the Arabic language which, when go into the Urdu language, they have a different meaning. And exactly same is the case here. That in the Urdu language, the word ummah would mean it would refer to the whole body politic of a section of people. But in the Arabic language, even a small group is called a ummah. So that is why it says kuntum khayra ummah, referring to the Sahaba, referring to the Ishmaelites. You are the best ummah, you are the best group of people. Ukhrijat, that have been taken out. Linnas, for people. Ta'muruna, and what do? You enjoin. Bil ma'roof, what is good. Wa, and tanhauna, you stop. An, from. Al munkar, what is evil. Wa, and tu'minuna, you believe. Billah, in God. So literally it would be you best people, taken out for people, order you, of the good and stop you from the evil and believe you in God. So literally it is like this. It's like a broken sentence, but it does make sense, isn't it? It says, you are the best ummah that has been taken out, or you are the best group that has been taken out for people, and you are ones who enjoin the maroof, and you are ones who stop people from the munkar or from evil, and you are ones who believe in God. وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَلَوْ آمَنَ أَهْلُ الْكِتَابِ wa and law. So law is like it's like something which expresses desire. Wa and law would that. Amana professed faith. Ahlul Kitab, people of the book. Lakana, indeed it would be. Khairan, better. Lahum, for them. So la is for, whom is them. So literally it would be, and had believed, people of the book, would have been better for them. And idiomatically, of course, it would be, and had the people of the book believed, it would have been better for them. وَلَوْ آمَنَ أَهْلُ الْكِتَابِ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. And then it says, مِنْهُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَأَكْثَرُهُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Minhum, among them. So referring to the people of the book. Al-Mu'minun. So among them are the Mu'minun, among them are the believers, which means that amongst these people of the book who will ultimately end up as believers, who will accept the new faith. وَأَكْثَرُهُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. But a majority of them is fasik, is disobedient. So fasikun is the plural of fasik, and aktharuhum, a majority, hum, of them. So literally we would translate it as among them believers, and most among them defiant. This is how literally the words reflect their meanings. But idiomatically it would be, among them are the believers, but most of them are those who are the defiant, those who are the disobedient. And then لَن يَدُرُّوكُمْ إِلَّا أَذًى. Lan, certainly not. يَدُرُّوكُمْ, shall cause you any damage. Illa, in fact, you can translate it as certainly not, they shall cause you any damage, which of course means they shall never be able to cause you any damage. Illa, except. Aza, a little bit of harm. So literally it would be, certainly not. They will harm you except a little bit of harm. Or idiomatically it would mean, they will never be able to harm you, they will never be able to harass you, they will never be able to harm you except for a little bit of harm, which means that they cannot give you a very permanent hurt. Yes, it could be something very small and temporary, referring to the fact that these people of the book can never inflict any great harm on you. Wa and remember, these people of the book are being referred to are the ones who were there in the times of the Prophet and not the ones who are here with us today. Wa and in, if yuqatilukum, they fight with you. Yuqatilu, they fight, kum, with you. Yuwallukum, they will turn adbar, on their heels, on their backs. So dubur is the wahid or the singular, and its plural is al-adbar. So al-adbar means back and yuwallu means turn. So if I translate it literally, it would be and if fight they with you, turn they on their backs. Which means if they fight you, they will turn on their backs, which means they'll just run away. Thumma, then, la, not. Yunsarun, they shall be helped. So literally it would be, then not they shall be helped. And idiomatically it would be, and then they shall not be helped. Zuribat alayhimus zilla. So zuribat means that something which is stamped on them. Stamped on them. Stamped is zuribat. Alayhim, on them. Azilla, disgrace. Disgrace shall be stamped on them. Aynama, wherever they are. Thuqifu, or in fact, this can be extended to the fact that wherever they are. Aynama suqifu, which means that wherever they are found. Suqifu, wherever they are found. So zuribat alayhimu zilla would mean zilla or disgrace is stamped on them wherever they are found. Aynama, wherever. Suqifu, they are found. Illa is except. Bihablim minallah. Hablim minallah means except for God's rope. Habl minallah, habl of course means rope. Minallah means from God. Wa and habl again is rope, minan nas, the rope of people. So you can see basically habl minan nas actually means the rope of those who have held the rope of God. Habl minan nas, that's what is idiomatically implied. Otherwise, literally it is except those who have the rope of God and who have the rope of people, which means that they are given some respite or some concession by the people who believe in the rope of God. Wa, and of course the rope of God is referring to the Quran. So habl is rope. Wa, and ba'u, they returned. Ba'u, they returned. Be ghazab, with the wrath. Min, from Allah, God. So they returned with God's wrath. They returned with God's anger. Wa, and zoribat, again the same word, zoribat, stamped. Alayhim, on them. Stamped on them. Al-maskana. So al-maskana means weakness. I mean, they lost faith, they lost strength, they became cowards. So the words are وَزُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَسْكَنَةُ, and stamped on them is maskana, and stamped on them is weakness. Or in other words, weakness was stamped on them. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ, now the reason is being told that why this happened. It says ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ. ذَلِكَ, this is because بِأَنَّهُمْ, they, كَانُوا, were, yakfuruna, denying, bi-ayatillah, God's verses. So literally it would be, this is because they were denying verses of God, or idiomatically this is because they were denying God's revelations. Wa, and yaqtulun al-anbiya, and killing al-anbiya, prophets, and they were killing prophets, bighayri haqq, without any justification. Bighayri haqq, without justification. So this has happened. I mean, as you can see, it says that they earned God's wrath and weakness was stamped upon them. And this happened because they were guilty of denying God's revelations and killing God's prophets. Yaqtulun al-anbiya bighayri haqq, and that too without any justification. Zalika, this happened. Bima, because. Asaw, asaw means they showed defiance. Wa, and. Kanu, kanu means they were. Ya'tadun, ya'tadun means to transgress bounds, to cross the limits. And this happened because they were defiant, they were disobedient, and they were ones who crossed the limits. They were ones who transgressed the bounds. So this is the reason for which it is being said that why was disgrace stamped on them, and why was weakness stamped on them, and why were they inflicted by God's ghazab, or by God's anger. And now this very beautiful verse that we discussed last time, that how the Quran has praised the people of the book of its own times, which tells us that of course these were the people who were waiting for the arrival of the last prophet, and when he came, they actually leapt towards him and accepted faith. It says laysu sawa, laysu, not, sawa, equal. So in fact laysu would mean they not, sawa, equal, they not equal. Of course that would mean they are not equal. So the word are is not, it's not expressed in the Arabic language, though, in the sense that we express it in our own language. It is understood from within the word. So laysu sawa actually is not they equal. And literally it would mean, this is what a literal translation would be. Idiomatically it would mean they are not equal, which means the people of the book are not equal. They are not the same, which means that they are good amongst them and they are bad people amongst them. So this is basically the delineation of the good ones among them. So they are not equal. Min ahlil kitab, min is from. Ahlil kitab, the people of the book. Ummah, a group. Qa'imatun, qaima means it is someone who are abiding by their promise. Qaima, they are still abiding by they stand by their promise. The word qaima actually means stand. However, of course, the next part is not expressed here. It is something that has been suppressed, but Ustaz has revealed in his translation, which means that they are people, there is a group who abides by its promise, which means the promise that was made to them, that if the last prophet would come and they are living in his times, they will move forward and accept faith, profess faith in him and support him. So it says amongst the people of the book there is a group who abides by its promise, who honors its promise. And then it says yatluna ayatillah. Yatluna, they recite. Ayatillah, God's revelations, God's verses. Ana al-layl. So ana al-layl means at the time of night. Wa, and, hum, they. Yasjudun, they prostrate. So, min ahlil kitab ummatun qaima, literally it would mean among people of the book, a group that abides by its promise. Yatluna ayatillahi ana al-layl, they are the ones who recite the verses of God at the time of night, referring to the tahajjud prayer. Wa hum yasjudun, and they are the ones who do sajda, who prostrate before the Almighty. And then something more is told about them. Yu'minuna billahi wal yawmil akhir. They believe in God. Yu'minuna billah, they believe in God. Wal yawmil akhir, and the last day. Wa, and ya'muruna bil ma'ruf. They enjoin the ma'ruf, they enjoin the good. Wa, and yanhauna means to forbid. They forbid an, from, al munkar, the evil. So they are the ones, these people of the book are ones who believe in God and who believe in the last day and who enjoin the ma'ruf, which means that they ask people to observe the ma'ruf, to observe what is good, and they stop them from doing bad things. Wa, and yusari'una. Yusari'una means they take lead. Fil khairat. Fi means in. Khairat means good deeds. So remember, this again is a difference. In the Urdu language, the word khairat means charity, but in the Arabic language, it refers to all good deeds. So وَيُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ, they are the ones who try to outdo one another in good deeds. Wa, and ulaika, they, minas salihin, amongst the righteous. So as-salihin is the plural of salih, and salih of course means righteous. So they are the ones who are among the righteous. Wa, and ma, whatever, yaf'alu, they do, min, from, khair, good, fa, therefore, lan, certainly not, yukfaruhu, it will be denied. So literally it would be, and what they do from amongst the good. What they do from amongst the good, certainly not, therefore certainly not, it will be denied. Or in other words, whatever nice things or good things they do, the reward of these good things shall not be denied to them. فَلَنْ يُكْفَرُوهُ. So remember the word kafara, just as it means to hide something or to deny something, it also means to be ungrateful. So here it actually means to deny something. So فَلَنْ يُكْفَرُوهُ would mean that if the good thing that they do it would not mean that these good things will go unnoticed. The reward of these good deeds shall not be denied to them. Wallahu alimun bil muttaqeen. Wa, and Allah, God, alimun, who has knowledge, bil muttaqeen, of the righteous. So literally it would mean, and God has knowledge of righteous, or and God has knowledge of the righteous. That is what the idiomatic translation would be. And before I go on to complete the rest of the idiomatic translation, let me pause here. If you have any questions regarding what we have studied up till now, please raise them.
Okay. My question was about the verse Duribat alayhimu dhillata aynama thuqifu.
Yeah.
So there's two things I'm confused. So first, the verse says that on them is the zillah, except when they have the connection with Allah, bihablim min Allah. Then why does it say, and then even though they have the connection with Allah, then they return with the ghadab from Allah? Like, why would they, if they have the connection from Allah, why would they return? Does the ba'u means the day of the judgment they will return with the
Actually,
ghadab
this
from
means if they don't hold, this means that if they don't hold to the rope of God and the rope of people. So this actually وَبَاءُ بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ is connected to the previous part. ضُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الذِّلَّةُ أَيْنَمَا سُقِفُوا. The exception is just regarding the previous part. So you see that if the exception takes place, it would mean that they have professed faith and they now have held on to some treaty maybe or some connection with God. So that is an exception to the previous part. But if that does not happen, then God says وَبَاءُ بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, then they'll return with the wrath of God.
So wabau basically means, and if there is no, like
Yeah,
it is, it's
and no
implied
such
that,
thing.
and if there is
Right.
no connection, then they
Yes,
will return.
connection.
Oh, okay,
Correct,
that
correct.
was it. That was my, okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else who has any question?
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, in the previously discussed words, as you mentioned about Amr bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar. So this Amr and this is Nahi is, I mean, referring to which Amr? Like the Hadith, if somebody does Amr with according to Hadith, would it be correct or would it be wrong?
No, actually the word Amr bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar is referring to a general responsibility which is imposed on every believer. So this is like saying that if something good comes to your knowledge, you should try to communicate into your surroundings. In something you see in your own surroundings that people are not doing correctly, and you also have an influence upon them, and your words can make a difference, then do please exercise your sweet will by expressing yourselves at that instance. So it's like exercising your own prudence and making yourself know that this is an instance in which I can make a difference. If I say something, people will hear it. So this Amr bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar, of course, has its own scope, its own restrictions and its own limitations. But what is implied here is that whenever you get a chance to speak something in favor of good, and you also know that speaking that whatever you're going to speak is going to make an impact, don't withhold yourself. Similarly, if you know that there are certain, maybe your own children maybe, or someone who are in your circle of authority, which means that someone who are under your circle of influence, if you try to stop them from doing something which is not correct, which is against universal moral principles, then you should at least try to do that. So it's basically the responsibility of each one of us as a common man, as a common person, as a common human being. Amr bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar is the responsibility of each one of us in our own circle of influence.
So can we use force in that?
Only and only if we are authorized. For example, if I am the ruler of an Islamic state or a Muslim state, and I am sitting at the helm of the affairs, yes, in that instance I can use force, because now I have been given the prerogative that at the state level I can stop people by force from doing something wrong. For example, all the laws that are enacted to stop people from doing bad things, for example, laws in which if they steal they'll be punished, for example, laws if they are unjust they'll be punished. So this is a prerogative that will now rest with the state. But as far as a common human being is concerned, as a common man is concerned, we don't have the authority to forcibly stop people.
How about our children, your children?
Even our children. If the children, when they are growing up, yes, that is something that you can do, because that is an instance in which they will not, they will never mind your force. But once they are grown up, now they are responsible for their own selves. You just cannot use any force against your children. You cannot say that, if they are doing something wrong, for example, let me give you an example. For example, if you're someone that is close to you, is living in your own house, he or she is consuming liquor, alcohol, and you would not like that boy or girl to consume alcohol, that all that you can say is that please don't drink this alcohol in our house. If you want to do it, you go outside of the house. This is a right that you have. But if you ask me that should I exercise this right, I would say no, because this is only going to make them further strong in their urge for alcohol. It's not going to solve the problem. So what I'm saying is, yes, you have the right. Yes, in your own circle of authority, you can stop the munkar from happening. But should you really do so? I think there are, in most instances in our society today, it's going to prove counterproductive. So always remember that to have a right does not mean that you start exercising that right. To have a right means that you now should think whether if I exercise this right, will it be productive for what I intended to use it or not. So two things are entirely separate. It can be counterproductive, and it has been in most cases when you start stopping someone who is in your house, that boy or girl, maybe who's your son or daughter, he's or she's going to do it again by going outside the house and maybe doing it in a more frequent way. You could have been an influence to stop, or maybe at least restrict that boy or girl. But now, by stopping that boy or girl from drinking in your own house, you have now given them the opportunity to go anywhere and do that.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Aisha. Okay, my question is this line you said, people of the book. So with this word book means just the Holy Quran or all the scriptures?
No. People of the book refers to the Jews and the Christians. So this is a term of the Quran. It's not used for the Quran, for the Muslims or the believers anywhere in the Quran. This is like a special term of the Quran which refers to the Jews and Christians, because before the Muslims or before the believers, they were the ones who were given the Torah and the Injil. So that is why they are called the people of the book. It cannot be extended to anyone except them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I suppose I don't have any more questions, so I'm just going to proceed to finish off the remaining verses. So it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَن تُغْنِيَ عَنْهُمْ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا وَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. Inna, indeed, الَّذِينَ, those who kafaru, denied, lan, certainly not, tughniya, will be of avail, anhum, to them, amwalahum, amwaluhum, their wealth. So literally it would be, indeed, those who denied, certainly not be avail to them their wealth, and not their awlad, not their children, minallah, from God, shay'a, even slightly. And idiomatically it would mean, indeed those who have denied, their wealth and their children will not the slightest be of benefit to them before God. So you see, these people thought that their own wealth and children would be able to save them on the day of judgment, and the Quran is giving this verdict that people who have denied, none of the helpers they think are ones who can help them in this world will avail them in the hereafter, not even the slightest. وَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. Wa, and ulaika, they, ashab. So ashab is the plural of sahib, which means person, and annar is fire. So literally it would be, and they, persons, fire, which of course means, and they are the persons of fire, or in fact they are the people of the fire, or they are the dwellers of the fire, or they are the ones who will end up in hell. So all these possible idiomatic translations can be understood. Hum, they, fi, in, ha, it, khalidun, forever, and they will remain in it forever. It of course refers to an-nar, which means the fire. So they will remain in the fire forever. Mathalu, so mathalu means the example. Ma, of he, yunfikun, spends his wealth. Fi, in, hazihi, this, al-hayat dunya, life of this world. So literally it would be the example, or example of those who spend in this world, in the life of this world. So the example of those who spend their wealth in the life of this world is kamasale, is like the example of those, rihin, as if there was a wind, fiha, in it, sirrun. So sirrun means something which freezes, very cold, something which has a lot of cold in it. So fiha sirrun would mean a wind that was very cold. Asabut, it came upon, hartha kaumin. So hartha kaumin means that the cultivated fields of people. Zalamu anfusahum. So zalamu means who were unjust, anfusahum, to themselves. And this of course is a very prominent term of the Quran, this usage of the Quran. Zalamu anfusahum means that they were unjust to their souls, which means that they were guilty of polytheism, because when a person does indulges into something polytheistic, he is unjust to his soul, because he does not have any justification for this, and that is why it is called. That is why shirk or polytheism is called zulmun azim. It's the greatest injustice. فَأَهْلَكَتْهُ, therefore, أَهْلَكَتْهُ, it destroys it. In other words, what is meant here is that the example of those who spend in this life or in the life of this world is the example of a freezing wind, of a wind that has freezing, maybe hail in it, and that wind then strikes a crop of people. Zalamu anfusahum, crops of people, which mean crops which were cultivated by people. And who are these people? Zalamu anfusahum, they had wronged their souls. فَأَهْلَكَتْهُ, and then that wind actually ruins it. So basically it is being said that the example of people who are going to spend their lives or their own life such that they spend their money in the life of this world, they are ones who are not going to be in any form of prosperity. They will never earn anything out of it. The example is like a wind which is extremely cold. When it strikes the crops of people, which mean the crops of the cultivated land, what it does is it totally destroys them. So it says that similarly will be the case of such people who have done kufr, who are guilty of disbelief. فَأَهْلَكَتْهُ, it will destroy them. Wa, and ma, not. Zalamahum, they became unjust, or in fact, it will be zalamahumullah basically. So, wama, wa and ma, not zalamahumullah basically. Zalama means was unjust. Hum, to them. Allah, God. And not God unjust to them. Which means, and God was not unjust to them. Walakin, but, anfusahum, they themselves, yazlimun, were unjust. So God was not unjust to them. وَمَا ظَلَمَهُمُ اللَّهُ. God did not do any injustice to them. They were themselves unjust to them, their own selves. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا بطانة من دونكم لا يألونكم خبالا ودوا ما عنتم قد بدت البغضاء من أفواههم وما تخفي صدورهم أكبر. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O you have believed, la not, tattakhizu you hold, bitanatan as friends, min dunikum those who are not among you, la ya'lunakum they spare not any opportunity, khabala to inflict harm on you. So do not make people friends outside of you, because they do not spare any opportunity to harm you. They are always after harming you. La yalunakum khabala, they will spare no opportunity. Khabala means to hurt you. They will never spare any opportunity to hurt you. Waddu ma anittum. So waddu means they love. Ma anittum, that which causes distress to you. Waddu, they like. Ma anittum, that causes distress to you. So they like those things which cause distress to you. Kad becomes badat from becomes evident. Al-Baghda. So Al-Baghda means their malice, their animosity, their bughz. Min, from. Afwahihim, from their mouths. So afwah is the plural of fuh. So it means afwahim would mean their mouths. Kad badat al-Baghda'u min afwahim would mean and evident is malice from their mouths, which means that whatever they speak, malice or animosity is evident from it. Wa and ma, that tukhfi they hide, suduruhum in their hearts. So sudur is the plural of sadr, and sadr means heart or your chest. So, and what they hide in their chest, akbar, is greater. So what it means is that whatever comes out of their tongues is nothing but malice, and what they hide in their chests is even more, is even greater. Wama tukhfi, whatever they hide in their chests is even greater. Qad bayyanna, qad, therefore, bayyanna, we explain, lakum, for you, al ayat, the verses, in, if, kuntum, you, taqilun, show aql, show your intellect, you show your sense, or you are sensible. So it would mean we explain for you the verses, so that we explain to you the verses in case you are sensible enough to understand them, in case you use your intellect, so that you are able to use their intellect. Okay, I'm going to stop here because this verse is going to continue, and if you have any questions regarding until what we have up till now studied, so please raise them.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I'm so sorry my internet had pushed me out. I don't see any raised hands. Anyone with any questions regarding the passage we've studied today? If not, then we'll be moving to general questions. Yes. So Dr. Asif, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, in Surah 105, people of the book have been instructed and they have been directed to refrain from tafarruqa and ikhtilaf. And despite the fact they were given clear guidance by Yana from the God Almighty, does Quran gives any specific reference for these words, tafarruqa, and that they became indulged in tafarruqa and ikhtilaf despite they had got the clear guidance? Is there any particular specific scope of these two words, or is it something generalized? And does Quran gives any particular example or some riwayah? They give some particular reference to this tafarruqa and ikhtilaf that Quran is.
Yeah, there are. I mean, it's not just the Quran. The Quran gives many examples, and so does the Torah. I mean, there are so many passages of the Torah and the Quran, one after the other, which tells them that they were given the Torah in which there was clear guidance that they should not indulge in idolatry, and they ended up indulging in idolatry, in which it was clear guidance that they should not indulge in interest, consuming interest, and they ended up in consuming interest, in which it was clearly said that they should believe in the last prophet, of course, the Israelites, who was Jesus, and they ended up denying them. So there is a whole chart sheet that is presented before them, that whatever the Torah told them, they did not abide by it, and instead they went south, and they actually had a very rash attitude towards the Torah, and then they also ended up killing their prophets, not just not just denying them, not just refuting them, but ended up killing them. So I've just mentioned a few of them. Otherwise, if you go through Surah Baqarah and also some of the other surahs, there is a very long chart sheet which is actually expressed before them. And even more, if you look at the book of Deuteronomy in the Torah, and of course the Gospel of Matthew in the New Testament, you'll find how Jesus has rebuked them, and you'll find how David, and especially the Quran, has also referred to the fact that Lu'ina allazina kafaru ala lisani Dawood wa Isa ibn Maryam, that the Israelites have been condemned, they have been cursed by David, the prophet, Dawood, and by Jesus. And if you look up the Psalms, if you look up some of the excerpts from the New Testament, you'll find how they have been condemned, how they have been they have been jolted. Remember, he was the last of the prophets of the Israelites, and he knew that after him they would be taken to task and they would be punished in a very grave way. So we know that he never married. He spent all his lives trying to make them realize that this is their last opportunity, and his whole life was spent as a result in trying to bring them closer to God and to make them realize the big mistakes they had done in the past. So these were some of the things that they had done, and all of these were absolutely contrary to the Torah. So drinking liquor, legalizing interest, similarly consuming certain things that were not allowed, and then making certain unlawful things to be lawful. So a very long list can be seen not only in the Quran but in the Bible as well.
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. Abdul Rahman Sahib, if you want to please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Thank you. Sir, with regards to Amr bil Maruf and Nahy anil Munkar, what about a state who has misinterpreted that verse and they are now forcing others, like for example, for the country of Afghanistan, they are forcing others, people should not keep hairstyles, and they have long beards, and are those people called as oppressed, and what is the status? What does Allah think for them?
So remember, first of all, that the word Amr bil Maruf is not referring to anything religious. This is the first mistake which is being done. The word Maruf refers to what is understood to be morally correct in a universal way, like truthfulness, like justice, like sympathy and kindness. Similarly, Munkar means things which are universally acknowledged to be bad or wrong. Amr bil Maruf and Nahy anil Munkar, first of all, does not even relate to religion. It relates to morally good things and morally bad, which means something which is accepted universally as good and universally as wrong. So the first mistake that they have done is that they have wrongly linked Maruf and Munkar to religious Maruf and religious Munkar. And the second thing is that they have gone way beyond their own personal jurisdiction. A state does not have any jurisdiction in this regard to force its people to wear a particular type of dress, or to force any of its views by, for example, we know that, just yesterday, I think, if I'm not forgetting, I was reading that in Iran, a woman was shot because she was driving without hijab, and the police fired to stop her, but she did not stop, and then they fired a whole volley of bullets, and she died on the spot, because they think, it's not just Afghanistan, I'm talking about Iran. So theocratic states like Iran and purely, I would say, states in which the erroneous interpretation of religion regarding personal matters has been implemented vis-a-vis the Taliban, you'll see that this is a common misunderstanding that has engulfed both these states. In fact, even in Saudi, there are certain directives which absolutely belong to your personal life, your personal choice and prerogative, and they have been taken at the state level and implemented. For example, we know that until recently, women were not allowed to drive openly. And so I once asked a cleric, or in fact, we were discussing this with someone, and the reason that they gave was, it was I mean, one could laugh and one could cry at the same time. So they said that, well, if women are allowed to drive, this will bring in, the word that the person used was that, I mean, they will indulge in adultery, and it will make them lose in their character, and they'll do all sorts of bad things. And of course, we could not find the link with driving to this. So what I'm trying to say is that these are overstepping their jurisdictions, and in this case, they have no authority. This is a personal matter. State can only interfere in cases in which life, death, and wealth of people is challenged, as for example left unprotected, or you are legislating to protect them. And similarly, it will also legislate to protect people from the harms that can be caused from other people. This is the only area. As far as religion is concerned, we know from Surah Tawbah that the only two religious directives that can be implemented, and that too with wisdom by the state, is the prayer and the zakah. So they can forcibly ask people to pray. Of course, forcibly means that they can if they want to, and similarly they can forcibly take zakah, which is the only tax. And if people desist from this, then of course they can be debarred from their rights as Muslims. These are the only two things. Other than that, they cannot insist on any compulsory military training. They cannot insist that you go and offer Hajj. They cannot insist and make you observe the fast of Ramadan. So the only two religious directives that they can implement are the prayer and the zakat. So that is a separate thing. But as far as Amal bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar is concerned, remember, this does not concern anything which is religious in its scope. This is something which is religiously good, which is Maruf, and something which is morally universally accepted as evil and bad, that is Munkar.
Will they be held accountable in eyes of Allah, sir? Or
well, I think this is something that, yeah. So we need to leave this to God to judge, because we don't know whether they are doing this deliberately in a way that they are making a wrong interpretation, which I assume they are not. But you see, as far as being held accountable before God is concerned, if you are sincerely doing something and you think that thing is the right thing to do, then I don't think that they'll be held accountable before God. Yes, if they were careless, if they did not give enough thought to what they were doing, or maybe not realizing their faults deliberately, then that is something that will be that will cost them something. But for example, if someone is extremely sincere, very diligent, he or she has done due diligence in trying to find out what Islam requires, and they end up with this erroneous interpretation, then it is here that I don't think they'll be held accountable. Yes, the evil effects of their decision are going to be rampant in this world, which are at the moment going on. But as far as the hereafter is concerned, anything done wrongly with sincerity and with full understanding that you are doing the right thing as far as you are concerned, that you're not making any careless mistake, or you're exercising your best judgment. But if that best judgment is ultimately wrong in the eyes of God, we have examples from the Quran which tell us that a person will not be penalized.
Dr. Saleem, the gentleman's asking if you can tell him how the example of the wind applies to people spending their wealth.
No, this is not an example. Basically, this is like a metaphorical simile, I would say, that is being presented. It is said that just as wind, which is normally beneficial, but when it becomes extremely cold and it is smitten with hail, it plays havoc. It wreaks havoc. So just as that wind that is understood to be very, when it blows calmly, it's very beneficial for the crops. But when it becomes extremely cold and it is smitten with hailstorms, then the crops are not going to benefit in any way, and they're just going to be ruined. So it's being told that such is the fate of people who have disbelieved. For them, whatever they have sown, it's not going to yield anything to them. It's just going to be destroyed. So it's like telling them that whatever they do, whatever good deeds they do, they think they're doing good deeds, but ultimately they are going to be of no use to them.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question in the chat, Dr. Saleem. How does consuming liquor, transacting riba, etc., termed as ikhtilaf and tafarqa?
No, it results in that. You see, tafriqa and ikhtilaf means that you are not following the directives of the Torah. When you're not doing that, the result is that you are dividing yourselves, because of course it's not that all of them are not going to accept it. There are some people who are going to accept it and others who are going to defy it. And that will of course cause a lot of consternation. So ending up not following their own religious directives is termed as an act of creating dissension among them. And of course, ikhtilaf means that you know the thing that is what right is. You know anything that is being told to you is clearly understood by you. But out of your own vested interest, out of your own, jealousy, it could be anything. You say that I'm not going to follow it. So it's like becoming slack in spite of knowing what the truth is. And this actually creates that division amongst people that we very well know it has created. And because of the fact that then it becomes a playground of multiple interpretations of the same text, because it's not just at times denying the text or not accepting the text. So they also were guilty of inventing a lot of subterfuges, a lot of excuses and pretext. So if you read the book of Leviticus, which is a book of the Old Testament, you'll see that how they twisted and distorted certain arguments or certain directives of the Torah, and this resulted in a huge fissure amongst them. So they were divided into many sects, many factions. And even today, if you look at the Jews, you'll find them divided into six major divisions: the Orthodox Jews, the non-Orthodox Jews, the modern Jews. Similarly, if you look at the Christians, you'll find them to be divided into scores of denominations. So if you look at their details, you'll find again that some of them would insist on a particular interpretation of a particular verse of the New Testament in a particular way, and some of the others would not. But ultimately, if you look, you'll find that they had left the Torah. So you see, for Christians, this had resulted because St. Paul in his own times had revoked the Sharia of the Torah in their own for them, and they said that for a non-Jew, the Torah is not applicable. So as a result, they stopped following the Torah and they started to follow what they thought was the New Testament, and they thought that the New Testament itself is a new book of God, and they are not required to follow the Old Testament. And there is no directive of the Sharia in the New Testament because, of course, it was not meant as a Sharia. The Sharia was already there in the form of the Old Testament. So this created a huge, I would say, if you look at Christian history and you look at the church history, you'll find that this one step in which the Sharia of the Israelites were revoked for the followers of Jesus, it actually it left them bereft of any standard to which they could turn and find out the truth. Because you see, once the Sharia was revoked for them, now the only thing that was needed for them, and which of course is something that is acknowledged by all Christian sects, is that as long as they believe that Jesus died on the cross for their sins, everything else will be forgiven. They just need to believe this one thing. And when they started to believe this, of course, then they had to flout many other directives of the Torah, and then this actually divided them into so many sects.
Okay. So then just adding on to this question, is the act of consuming liquor and transacting riba, is that wrong, or what comes out of it? What is?
Of course, that in itself is wrong. But you see, the consequence of that was now they became divided amongst each other. It's like saying when we Muslims stop following the Quran and we start to reinterpret it, or maybe not interpret it, and move to some other traditions in which we say, well, this is applicable for us and this is not applicable for someone else. So just as when we stop following the Quran and we start, for example, believing in historical anecdotes or maybe something which belongs to our culture, the reference point, which is the book, we lose sight of that. And then we pick up our own, we have our own beliefs, we have our own context, and we stick to them. And as a result, because we don't have any central word to stick to, it happens that all of us deviate. So today, if you look at the Muslim Ummah, we are divided into so many sects. And if you ask me, and if you can ask any person, I think you would agree too, that it's simply because we have left the Quran. And we are now divided into sects, because now instead of the Quran, there are historical anecdotes, there are weak ahadith, there are so many other things, cultural things that have taken over in place of the Quran. So in a very similar way, this happened to them as well. Instead of sticking to their Torah, they started to deviate from the Torah, and then they had a lot of tradition things, they had a lot of cultural things, they had a lot of things which made them actually more closer to those traditions than to the Book of God.
Does this mean that the sin of unbelief is actually bigger than the generosity, the virtue of generosity shown by the people of the book? And how does it
Well, that actually means that their generosity is not going to produce, yes, it only means that their generosity or their spending is not going to produce any reward for them in the hereafter. So you see, the words are Ma yunfikuna fi hazil hayati dunya kamasale rihin. The example of such people is the example of a wind which has a lot of cold in it and then it spites a crop. So it's like it's telling them that what you do in this world is not going to bear any consequence, because in the earlier part it is said, Lan tughniya anhum amwaluhum wala auladuhum innal lazina kafaru. So those who have disbelieved, their wealth and their riches are not going to be of avail to them. So denying God or denying a prophet of God is going to divest them of any reward in the hereafter. I mean, after all, they are doing some good deeds also. So they are being told that because of the fact that you have ended up denying God's message, and that too deliberately, so whatever good you do, it will not have any reward for you in the hereafter.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Saleem. We have no more questions at this time, and we are all out of time. Thank you for a wonderful session.